Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Loreweek. I am, as ever, your host, the Lore Dude. We're starting a little bit early, on purpose, because obviously in about an hour and 50 minutes, AGDQ is going to start. We will, as we always do, be restreaming AGDQ here this year. I want to, as ever, briefly explain why we're doing that, on the off chance that some of you haven't been around since the last time we've done that, because I know we have some new viewers. The general idea is that I know this is going to sound strange, but some people like watching streams and chatting. I know, that's utterly insane, but it's something I have observed to be true many times. I myself prefer to do that as well. And the actual Twitch chat for AGDQ is horrible. I'm just going to say that as succinctly as I can. And most of the other chats for AGDQ are also horrible. So, rather than actually going ahead and trying to force people to submit themselves to such horribleness, we'll just restream it here, and you guys can use this chat over here in order to chat and discuss and otherwise interact with people while watching the streams. I myself will probably be popping in and out. I was actually hoping to basically take this week off. I know that sounds really selfish, and I do apologize for it. I basically don't get days off. For those of you not aware, I work 7 days a week, every week in the year. But the AGDQ streams is one of the very rare times when I have the opportunity to take time off, because I can get recording stuff done, YouTube stuff done during these events, but I can't stream. So basically half of my job is on hold as a consequence of the stream. Now, if I was actually at the point where all of my YouTube stuff was done, then I would have no YouTube stuff to do, and I can't stream, which means I can actually justify taking the week off. Well, I can't do that, because I've got 6 more videos it's literally 6 videos I still have to finish. So, whenever I'm done with those 6 videos, I will go ahead and be poking my head into the stream, assuming I finish all 6 by the end of the week, which is the goal. So that's where I'm at right now. Hopefully it's still going to be a good AGDQ. So, like I said, I'll be popping in myself. Let's talk about some brief stuff here. Here we go. So, just a couple of things of relative news. Skytorn was canceled, which makes me very sad. I was actually really looking forward to that. For those of you not aware, Skytorn was a game that's being developed by the people who also made Celeste. Now, to fully discuss this, yes, Velvetrix, to fully discuss this, by the way, hi everyone, the company who made Celeste, I can't think of the name, please forgive me, started working on Skytorn, and then basically took a break to go make Celeste, one of the best side-scrolling punishing platforms I've ever seen in my life, and then went back to Skytorn, and then decided not to do Skytorn anymore, because Sakage just subbed. Thank you very, very much, Sakage. Hang on, I don't actually have the thing ready to go, but I will momentarily. Oh yeah, I suppose I should talk about that too. I'll talk about that after I finish the initial thing. The initial news barrage here. So that's from Sakage to Doom. Thank you very, very much, Sakage. As ever, those Twitch subs are much appreciated. Especially since pretty soon I'm going to have to be able to prove to an apartment board that I make the kind of money I say I do. And one of the things that I'm going to be showing them is the fact that I get these Twitch subs. So thank you for that. Thank you for giving me that. Valve's writer, that is to say Valve/Portal's writer, was rehired at Valve. Clearly, that means... I have no idea what that means. Probably doesn't mean anything. He's going to be doing a side story for Artifact. That's probably what it means. Let's see. Comcast is being sued for fraud in Minnesota now. That suit was just filed on December 21st, so that's pretty recent. They are still actively defeating, or I should say defeat, I'm saying that wrong. They're still actively fighting a suit by the state of Washington, which was pushed last January. It's been going for over a year at this point. Now, you might be like, why are you saying thanks to Wraith? Well, see, Wraith is awesome, and that's why I'm saying thanks to Wraith. X64 for Wolfenstein. I think that's one of the first things we've had towards Wolfenstein this whole time. Thank you very, very much, Wraith. Hopefully I'm spelling that right. Wolfenstein. Yep, okay. But in all honesty, screw Comcast. I actually read the entirety of the suit that's going. I've decided I'm not even going to summarize it to you, except in excess, because it's actually quite complicated. It boils down to the fact that they are alleging that Comcast has continued in the year of 2017 to maintain deceptive practices in order to try and overcharge customers, as well as to make it seem like they aren't overcharging them. That's the super basis level summary. The specifics have to do with something to do with their cable program and the exact nature of which shows are being alleged to actually require federal government funding in order to add additional money for the additional equipment, which actually isn't allowed thanks to a previous lawsuit, which was between the FCC and Comcast back in 2016, and it's this whole thing. Suffice to say, the state of Minnesota is suing Comcast. The state of Washington is suing Comcast. I hope Comcast burns in a fire. Moving on. How many of you guys know who Robert Orkey is? And while I have a question for that, let's see how many people are on here. So we got a lot of people. Spirit of Memory, Sakages, Peter, Leander Bregwin, Corrales Malachor. I know Wraith is there. Hazardous. Black Vial. Did I say Bregwin? I know Leander isn't here. Aethel is here. What's up? Yeah, or the Star Trek guy. That hurts, Cashel. I want you to know that. The fact that he is being associated as the Star Trek guy, that hurts. On a deeply personal level. Hello, Marley. Hello, Denydvard?
Pay close attention. Hopefully you'll learn.
Zvia, Cybergarden. Someone just donated. Why are people donating? Hang on. Don't have that up either. Yes, it really does, Corrales. Hi, Max Time. It's a donation from Dramatic Pause. King Bubble! Thank you very, very much, King Bubble. There we go. Okay, let me jot this down before I do anything else. Bubble. Anthem. Thank you very, very much for that continued support. As ever, it really does mean a lot. All of the... I'll talk about some financial stuff. In a bit. No, I really will, because we have a couple things to discuss.
Of course you follow me. They all do.
Hello, Melkor. And hello, Vigilant. Happy New Year. I will answer your question later, Vigilant. Don't worry, I do plan to talk about it. We've got a bit of a paradigm thing going on here. New paradigm. Vigilant. 0, 10 towards... Well, he doesn't put it towards anything. If you want to hold off on putting that towards anything until you hear me say the financial stuff, that's okay, Vigilant. Because I do have something to share about that. But I kind of want to wait until we discuss the news, and the dog doesn't want to discuss it, because, I mean, people exist. Discovery has not been canceled yet. Thank you very, very much, Peter. As ever, I do very, very much appreciate those tier subs. What would you like to put that towards? And I will just kind of put this note here. Peter... If everyone wants to wait until putting stuff until I tell you stuff, yay. So, where was I? Orky, right. Okay, so I hate his guts. He is actually one of the most unpleasant people I've encountered in Hollywood. He is also one of the people I have used as a textbook example of one of the worst writers in Hollywood. Now, I know that this is the internet and that people like to use hyperbole, so I want to say, first of all, hello to Andrew. And second of all, this is not hyperbole or exaggeration. I have actually legitimately used Robert Orkey's writing as a textbook example of bad writing. The man is an awful, awful writer, okay? Okay? So I was looking something up regarding, I forget which episode, because I've been working on TNG stuff this last week, and I just basically stumbled across a quote by this man. It's actually 3 quotes. But this guy... So he wrote Star Trek Into Darkness. Now, I have said multiple times that I actually like Star Trek Into Darkness, but the script for Star Trek Into Darkness is, in my opinion, gutter trash. Like Slowjack McCrow over there, he's awesome, but this is like the opposite of Slowjack McCrow. Thank you very, very much. If you'd like to put that sort of something, just let me know. Jot this down really quick. Slowjack McCrow. And Injato, welcome and thank you, as ever, very, very much for those subs. So I'm gonna stop reacting to subs for just a second because I do want to share this in totality. Someone made a post discussing the issues with Star Trek Into Darkness's script. I have actually read that article. It was relatively nice. Like, it wasn't your usual bash hate fic when it comes to the internet. It was just someone saying, these are the things, yes, Malachor, legitimately. These are the things that are wrong with the film. Here's some ideas on how to fix this broken film, okay? Now, Orky decided to respond to that article personally. Here's what he said. I think the article above is akin to a child acting out against his parents. Makes it tough for some to listen, but since I am a loving parent, I read these comments without anger or resentment, no matter how misguided. Having said that, 2 biggest Star Treks in a row with best reviews is hardly a description of broken. And frankly, your tone and attitude make it hard for me to listen to what otherwise might have been decent notions to pursue in the future. As I love to say, there's a reason why I get to write movies and you don't. End quote. So in case anybody's ever wondered, there's 2 reasons I despise Robert Orky. The first is because he is a terrible writer, and the second is because of that. He actually continued in a separate thing, because someone decided to compare to compare the script of Into Darkness to Raiders of the Lost Ark. I want to stress this because this is very important. The comparison was not, again, a hate fic. It's not like the comparison was like, Raiders of the Lost Ark was a beautiful film of total perfection and his film is awful. It was just comparing, I hope I'm mispronouncing it, Micromano, because I hate him that much. It was a comparison between Raiders of the Lost Ark and Into Darkness. Now, it wasn't a kind comparison, because obviously, the fact is that Battle Programmer's there. I said I wouldn't acknowledge it, but I changed my mind. Thank you very, very much, Battle Programmer. As ever, much appreciated. Whoops, I've lost all my notes. There we go. So, while it was obviously still a critique, because the script of Into Darkness is crap, it was nevertheless not, which is like, oh, it's garbage and awful. It was an actual critique. Well, his response to this, I'm going to have to bleep because I don't like to cuss on my show. Quote, Star Trek Into Darkness has infinitely, spelled wrong, more social commentary than Raiders in every universe. And I say that with Harrison Ford being a friend. You lose credibility big time when you don't honestly engage with the effing writer of the movie asking you an honest question, all caps. You prove the cliche of effing fans, and rude in the process. So as Simon Pegg would say, F off. I want to remind you that this man makes a lot of money writing terrible scripts for Hollywood, and has done so for many years. He wrote Amazing Spider-Man 2, and it shows. He wrote Transformers 2, Revenge of the Fallen, and it shows. Thank you, Psychotic. As ever, much appreciated. Now, you might be like, why are you sharing this? Because I felt the need to. That's it. Because I've had some people go, oh, why do you hate this guy so much? I wanted to go ahead and give, you know me, I like to give evidence. I like to give credence. I like to... Did he really, Micromano? That's hysterical. I wanted to give some kind of backing for why exactly it is that I despise this man. Moving on. Next news tidbit. Okay, so this is a weird one. Some of you probably know that Ben Brode actually left Blizzard last year. He was one of several people to leave Blizzard. Several dozen people. Now, no, this is not me saying Blizzard's dying or awful. Let's just leave that at the door. I only bring it up because it was of all of the many people leaving Blizzard, it was the one person that didn't make sense to me. Because Brode is a huge fan of making games, and he's a total geek, right? I actually really like Brode quite a bit. And it just seemed strange that in the middle of Hearthstone pushing out an entire new expansion, he would be like, yeah, I'm out, peace. Well, now we actually know why it is that Brode did that, because he has formed his own company called Second Dinner, along with several other people who have also left from Blizzard. And they're making a new Marvel game. We don't know any details other than one other, which I have deliberately not shared yet. They did a little announcement video. Brode was a total geek, like he always is. Blah blah blah. They're hiring, they're hiring staff right now, etc. etc. So that's cool. That's cool. They are working under NetEase. Now, no, we don't know it's a mobile game, but the fact that it's under NetEase, yeah. For those of you who don't remember, NetEase is a Chinese mobile company, which is, it's basically the Chinese EA, or the Chinese actor, or whatever you want to call that. They're not a good company. They have a fairly long and repeated history of being awful. And I point that out, by the way. That's been true since before Diablo Immortal, which is also being developed by NetEase, in conjunction with NetEase, I should say more accurately. Yeah, I don't have anything else to add to that. Although I do actually think, now Tencent is a little bit different. Tencent is more like the EA, or excuse me, the Chinese BlackRock. Tencent is primarily an investment firm that just happens to invest primarily in video game developers. Tencent owns an absolutely enormous amount of other gaming companies, including quite a few outside of China. So no, Tencent is not the Chinese EA. NetEase is the Chinese EA. I have no idea who, Thor. That's up to you to decide, as usual. Actually, yeah, Goldman's probably a better comparison, Goldtick. You notice I kind of stumbled over that for a moment because I was like, Anyways, so that's... Yay. Whatever. Speaking of Blizzard, while we're here, Blizzard lost 2 CFOs last year, in the last few months. One of them, Spencer Newman, who has gone on to work at Netflix, and another one, Amrita Ahuja, who has gone on to work at Square Enix. Now, this might not mean anything. CFOs, anything in the so-called C block tends to cycle through jobs very regularly. Whether that's a good thing or not depends on opinion, but it is standard marketing practice for any of the C jobs, which is CEO, CFO, COO, and CMO, to shift jobs on a fairly regular basis. There's a reason why I've said the average CEO lifespan being at one company is like 2 to 4 years. So this may or may not actually mean anything, but the fact that they pushed out 2 CFOs so close to each other is a little bit strange. Again, I'm not saying it's the end of Blizzard or anything like that. It's just strange, and it's something that I don't actually know what to make of. I thought I'd mention this, though, as well, because I've had several people ask me what the hell is a CFO. CFO specifically stands for Chief Financial Officer. They are the people who do budgeting, forecasting, cost-benefit analysis, reporting, and they almost universally work alongside the COO, that's the Chief Operating Officer, directly reporting to the CEO, Chief Executive Officer, part of the C-suite that I just mentioned. CFOs are almost universally money people. I've used that phrase before. But the reason I use the phrase, for those of you who never heard me use this phrase, the reason I use the phrase money people is it's to describe the people who actually are involved with the finances of a company and basically make the actual decisions regarding what a company does. I use the term financial people, or the money people, because it's actually a lot of different groups here and there throughout the course of a company, and it's not always the same people. However, a CFO is almost always one of the money people who actually makes decisions when it comes to a company. So, that's a CFO in a nutshell. Good morning, Tazara. There we go. Yeah, no kidding, King Bubble. Don't forget that right now we're going through what is the beginnings of a tech recession, which we don't actually know where it's going right now. We'll see in the next few months. A CEO is also almost always one of the money people, although not always, strangely enough. Sometimes the CEO is totally powerless. There have been several companies where a CEO's job is to basically stand there and make meetings, and that's it. Like, they're almost literally a... I don't want to use the word puppet, but, irrelevant job, Sometimes that's the president, sometimes it's both. It depends. Hello, Catabo. What else we got here? Is that it for my news? It looks like that's it for my news. So, first thing I want to talk about, figurehead, that's a much better term. Thank you. I want to talk about something really quick that we're doing on the website. Did you guys know that I have a website? Now, you guys probably think, oh, Lore, you're just memeing. Well, no, I do constantly point out that I have a website for a good reason. It's because there are still people who haven't really gone through that thing. I'm not saying you have to. I'm just saying I do maintain and develop and continue to add content to that website for a reason. And I will intend to continue to do so. But one of the changes we just most recently made is, this is something I've been sitting on and thinking about for a while. So for those of you not aware, this was actually a debate on Discord just last week. Yeah, it's 3 question marks. You got to get it right. For those of you not aware, we have a process by which you can put Twitch subs, bits, and direct donations towards the funding of a future run. The thing is, that's always been just kind of a not really thing. Because all I've been asking for the most part, for a run to happen is $60, which is not a lot. Now, I'm not saying that to sound like I'm greedy. I'm not saying that to sound like I'm horrible. I'm just pointing this out. I'm just pointing this out because it's true. The whole point of the $60 things was to cover the cost of the game itself, and just to show that people had interest in me covering a particular game. Make sense? As I've pointed out to several people, if I actually charged a an amount in per hours, like $8 an hour or whatever, that would go up a lot, right? So I needed to put something there, but I didn't want to put a hard dollar amount, and I was just debating forever, and I have been debating for months exactly how to do this, and I've tried several things. So what we're doing instead is a little bit of a different system. We've basically divorced part of the specific dollar amount with the amount needed to fund it. Or let me put this in another phrase. There's no such thing as actually funding a run anymore. Instead, there is putting interest towards a run. If that doesn't make sense, I can continue to try to explain. But if you notice on the website, a lot of runs that were funded show that they're not funded now. That's because funding as a concept doesn't exist anymore. Instead, what you see on there is a gradient of how much each run has had money put towards it, how much money has been put towards it, and the only, rather than like having to hit a set amount, the only thing generating the amount of the bar that's full is how much the other bars are full. Make sense? In other words, we have one game, I even know the game off the top of my head, which has like $300-something, which has been put towards it, right? So in other words, every other one of those is X out of $300. Make sense? Because 300 is the most. That's it. That's the idea. Because I know, again, because I don't streaming full-time, because most of my viewers actually support me on Patreon, because of the fact that this is, obviously if you're already putting like $2 a month towards Patreon, and that's all you can afford, which I understand, by the way, then it feels weird to just say, and also if you want me to stream something, I demand this X amount of money. This is for the people who do have the extra money to spend on that, or for the subs. There's a reason I put Twitch subs towards these now, specifically to show interest in a work, or to try and say as a form of thank you for people who are just donating separately, like Vigilant did earlier. Make sense? So I hope that all makes sense. So in other words, to now answer Vigilant's earlier question, yeah, Dark Messiah is totally funded. It's just that is the amount it has now out of all the amounts put towards it. Make sense? I'm pretty sure Vampire is the current most funded one. We're still going to keep the color system, because color shows how many people have put towards a thing, and the amount will be how much has been put towards the thing. So we're still tracking both variables. I did have to do a little bit of extra paperwork to get us to this part. I actually had to spend like about an hour going back through my records and tracking everything and putting it all in. But I could do that because I do keep record of every single donation I get and every single sub I get. So I had the data available to do that. So having said that, Vigilant, Peter, Slow Jack McCrow, Inyato, Battle Programmer, and Psychotic, what would you like to put your subs towards? And donation in Vigilant's case. Now, how does this affect the mini-nation? Someone asked that earlier. At the moment, I'm not sure, to be 100% honest. Right now, yeah, I believe you, Leander. Right now, mini-nations are basically on hold. The Rebels mini-nation is basically funded. A lot of people have shown interest in it, and a lot of people have put money towards it. You got it. Enderal, Skyrim. So that's probably going to happen. I don't know when. I have spent the last basically month of my life either being sick, cramming YouTube videos, or cramming YouTube videos while sick. I need a little bit of a break from the YouTube side of things once I'm done with those additional 6 videos. So hitting the Rebel Mini Nations is going to wait for the time being. I will get to it at some point. That will happen at some point. I don't have an ETA. That's the answer to that question. Future Mini Nations, we'll see. Because basically I'm still playing catch-up after the summer, after the visit, after the SGDQ, after being sick again, after going to visit again, after being sick once more, actually twice more. I am behind, and I'm still trying to get caught back up. So once I'm caught back up, I'll be in a better position to answer those questions with regards to my workload, because I already have a massive amount of work to do. Thank you very, very much, Goldtech. As ever, I do appreciate. And I'll put that towards Witcher 3, which I've already done. Thank you. And Kaifrin, yep, I actually saw that. Kaifrin, make sure I'm spelling that right, yep. Put that towards Spyro. Thank you very, very much, Kaifrin. And Giotto shows interest in RimWorld. You got it. That just leaves Battle Programmer, Slowjack McCrow, and Peter. I thought I had something else to add about the website. I don't remember. Whatever. Doesn't matter. Let's get to actual stuff. So first, as usual, we're going to hit some Tumblr questions here really quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No. Yes, 5 Tumblr questions. We have a bunch. One of these is actually a Twitter question, believe it or not. And then I have a real topic to discuss. And then we should be done for the thing. Thank you, as ever, SJ. First question. Now, this is a nice, simple one. How many of you guys know what a proper remake is? I assume most of you do. If you're listening to me, there's about a 90% chance you know what a proper remake is. So, let's just get to the question. Let's assume someone walks up and is like, hey, listen, I'm Q, and I am going to give you 10 proper remakes, just, right? Which ones do you want? Now, I have to admit, this is a hard question for me, because I actually have a fairly large laundry list of games that I would love to have a proper remake on. Final Fantasy VIII is actually on that list, yes. Gabriel Knight 3, I don't actually know what that is. Gothic 2, Gothic 3. Yeah, Pokemon also. Yeah, Pokemon does proper remakes. Final Fantasy has done proper remakes. Daikatana. Interesting. Okay, I'm with it. Daggerfall. Yep. Popular one. I'll never do it, Fab Alex. Star Control 2. I'm with you on that one, too. Only games. We're only talking about video games. Games. Legacy of Kain Blood Omen. Having just recently played through Defiance, I think I agree with you. Morrowind. Republic Commando. I'm with you on that. Age of Empires 2. I'm with you on that. Baldur's Gate 2. Yeah, Baldur's Gate should have gotten a proper remake, but money people decided that it can't happen. Like, they actually refused to allow it. They were going to make the Baldur's Gate 1 and 2... remasters, the ports that came out recently, into proper remakes, and I can't remember the name of the company, said, no, don't do that. So that company needs to die in a fire. Strider on the NES, I'm with you. Planescape Torment, I'm with that. Ace Combat 5, still haven't touched the Ace Combat series, although 7's coming out soon, and we are going to play through that. Mass Effect 3. KOTOR, yeah. Let's assume for a moment that it is a good proper remake, KOTOR, for the purposes of the discussion. So let's assume that it is basically a legitimate... I mean, it wouldn't be called a proper remake if it wasn't good. That's baked into the definition. Arena, Daggerfall, Morrowind, Oblivion, Skyrim, and Fallout 3. Interesting list. I'm with you on some of those. Spore, I'm definitely with you on that. KOTOR and KOTOR 2, yeah. Hello, Tonic. The Dark Forces series, yeah. TIE Fighter, oh. Rogue Squadrons. Tor as a single player... Sure. Mass Effect, Dragon Age, Witcher. What? I don't think Witcher 3 really needs a proper remake. Personally, of course. Web of Shadows, I can see that. Dragon Age 2, I can see that. All the other games before 9. Yeah, we're at the weirdest part of history where we are actually at a point where proper remakes could use a proper remake. Like FF4 and the DS was a proper remake. Definitively. It's like one of the examples of the concept. And yet, that was a DS game that came out like 12 years ago or whatever. It is old now. We could use a proper remake of FF4 on the DS. Just weird. Ocarina of Time, yep. Super Mario 64, yep. Although Mario 64 actually got one. I feel like pointing that out. The DS version of Mario 64 was definitively a proper remake. Pokemon Original, which we've actually gotten 2 proper remakes of that. GoldenEye 64, the Age of Empires 1, Deus Ex, yeah. Mass Effect, yeah. Fallout New Vegas. I'm not sure I'm with you on that one. Usually my own thing for whether or not something should get a proper remake is dependent upon how much it is aged, or how well it is aged. That's actually a better way to put that, how well it is aged. For example, I could go back right now and play, let me use a straight example, Legend of Zelda Link to the Past right now. I could play that and enjoy that this very minute, right? I could play Mega Man X1 right now. I shouldn't use SNES games. I could play Master of Orion 2 right now and still enjoy it, right? However, I cannot go play, oh gosh, now I'm trying to think of Civilization 2, which came out about the same era, or I'm trying to think of a SNES game. I mean, FF4, right? Neverwinter Nights, yeah, we're going to be going through those soon. Vanilla WoW with cutting modern engine, I mean, I'm with that. Vampire the Masquerade, yeah. Redemption, specifically. The original Doom, yeah. I'm with you on that. Oh, by the way, hello, Arjun Voss. Final Fantasy Tactics proper remake. I'm kind of with you on that one. Because we do have the PSP version, which did fix several issues with the original, but not all of them. So I'm kind of with you on that. The Dark Cloud games, yeah, I'm kind of with you on that as well. Transport Tycoon. FF7, I mean, there's a reason FF7 was the most publicly requested proper remake. If I was to actually sit down and do this, I'd probably have to limit myself to basically one game per franchise. Because there are, for example, I would like a proper remake of FF1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. I would like a proper remake of Civilization 2. I would like a proper remake of Daggerfall and Morrowind and KOTOR and a lot of the other games you guys have been listing, right? So I try to limit myself. For example, of the FFs, the one I would most want a proper remake for is either 3 or 8. Of, the Elder Scrolls series, the one I'd most want is Morrowind, for obvious reasons. Why Civilization 2? Okay, I want to explain that, because that's actually a good question. See, you could argue that we don't need a proper remake of Civilization 2, but Civilization 2 did one thing better than every other 4X game I've ever played, ever. And that was its scenario builder. The amount of flexibility and modularity with the scenario builder in Civ 2 was amazing. Like, I played Civ 2 a decent amount, just Civ 2, but I played the scenarios in Civ 2 to death. I put in hundreds of hours just on scenarios in that game. None of the Civs or 4X games since then have really had the same level of that, of being able to play scenarios or supports or cosmic things or whatever, right? So basically, that kind of scenario support with like a modern Civ's conveniences and interfaces and rules, yes. That's why I specifically say Civ 2. It was one of the things I was most excited about for Civ 6, but apparently Civ 6 does not have the same kind of support, or at least it certainly hasn't materialized. I just got a new Patreon, which is awesome. Thank you, patron, who I shall not name out loud, if you happen to be alive right now. Now, Peter points out something interesting, because as I just pointed out, agree, Platonia, as I just pointed out, one of the biggest definitives for me is whether or not, okay, I'll go ahead and say thank you, Arsky. I try never to say the name that I get on the email for obvious privacy reasons. Ooh, that's a good question, Max Time. Don't let me forget that one. But I say the biggest thing for a proper remake for me is that the game has not aged well. Morrowind, right? A game that just has so many issues with going back to playing the original, even modded. Neverwinter Nights 1, Baldur's Gate, Fallout. Nobody mentioned Fallout 1 or 2, Usually it's about an older game having an older system. Dragon Quest 1 is another good example. Or Dragon Quest 3 if you want a much better game. But there is one other thing that makes me want a proper remake. Yeah, Deus Ex is another great example. There's one other thing that this is just me personally, that I like or want a proper remake of. And it's a game that, even though it's aged well, I just want it better. and I want it more. I'll give you the example of this, Final Fantasy VI. In my opinion, FF6 has aged brilliantly. Now, you could say I'm biased, but I don't care, because this is my honest opinion. I can go play FF6 on the SNES right now and reasonably enjoy it. I could play it on the GBA and absolutely enjoy it, because I think it's aged well. But despite the fact that it avoids the quality of requiring a proper remake, I would still want one for it, because it's a game that I think could be done even better, adding more to an existing excellent game. Make sense? So that's the two categories of proper remakes. The one where it's needed and the one where it's wanted. So because there's a lot in this one that doesn't really qualify for this one. Hello, Mukul. Yeah, exactly. Imagine FF6 with additional details, more fleshing out of the world, of the characters, more development of the zones and the areas and the music and the visuals and the combat. FF6's combat is not exactly bad, but it is fairly simple, right? So, there are many things that could be done to make what I consider to be an excellent game even better, and the same could be said for many other games as well. Someone mentioned Ocarina of Time, for example. Sargai just pointed out Secret of Evermore and Secret of Mana. Secret of Mana has actually been one of my personal wants for a proper remake for many, many years, which is one of the reasons I was so willing to embrace the remake that came out last year. I'm not quite willing to call it a proper remake, but, whatever. Now, Max Time asked which Kingdom Hearts game would I do a proper remake of, and there are only two that come to my mind immediately. And you know which ones those are. It's 1 and Recom, or Com, or whatever you want to call it. Now, the thing is, 1, in my opinion, does have many issues to it. It really does. It is a very clear early installment weirdness when it comes to the Kingdom Hearts series. But Com is awful. So, looking at it, really, Com should be the one with the remake. Com should just be fixed. just fix it. God dang it, it's so horrible. So, I would have to choose Chain of Memories. I would have to. But I have to admit, I would be very tempted to go really tear into 1 as well. So, that's my answer. Gosh, I don't know what else. There's so many. There's so many games. I mentioned, I'm actually a little surprised no one else mentioned this in chat. Fallout 1 and Fallout 2 are actually pretty high on my list because I'm a pretty big fan of those games' stories. But Caspian there, he hates Fallout 1 and 2. Like, he despises them with every fiber of his being. So, while I thank you for your candidness, Caspian, and your willingness to say that on the stream, I do have to question your virulent hatred. And say thank you, and would you like to put that towards anything? Marluxia needs to be like super slow-mo. There's a splash of water for some reason.
You follow me. They all do.
Oh my gosh. Honestly, so I suppose I haven't really answered the original questioner's question, but that is, of course, the problem. Because there is such a huge list. Hang on, Vigilant. Because there is such an absolutely huge list, it would be difficult for me to only pick 10. Even with the Q-Snap, it would be difficult for me to only pick 10. Like I said, I'd probably limit myself. 1 FF game, 1 Kingdom Hearts game, 1 4X game, 1 CRPG. That would be hard. There are so many CRPGs I think should get a proper remake. Fallout 1, Fallout 2, Baldur's Gate 1, Baldur's Gate 2, Planescape Torment. Probably Arcanum. I personally think Arcanum has aged better than most of the other ones, but that's just my opinion. It certainly could still use, modern touching up. It's worth noting that Arcanum, or Arcanum, if you prefer, is a game that is not particularly well designed when it comes to its balancing. There's just the tech versus the magic thing is just off, right? I would still make them CRPGs. See, one of the reasons I love Divinity Original Sin so much is because of the fact that it proved something I have theorized on for a long time. And that theory is a CRPG can be done in a modern era and still work, and still be a CRPG, but still have modern conveniences. And DOS 2 proved me right about that. That had been a theory of mine for years. But for those of you not aware, I absolutely adore Divinity Original Sin 2. It's actually Shadow of the Tomb Raider. Thank you again, Caspian. It is my favorite CRPG of all time. Hands down. So we can make CRPGs good now, right? That's what I do. Maybe not literally that. CRPG. So, historically speaking, a CRPG, I believe, refers to a computer RPG, which obviously isn't really a very definitive thing. But the genre itself refers to the general type of top-down, isometric, pseudo-turn/pseudo real-time, pen and paper-inspired RPG. Something like Sildeer there. Sildeer is a pen and paper RPG. Thank you very much, Sildeer. Would you like to put that towards something? But the idea being that it's something that very clearly is designed for a specific tone and a specific gameplay style. It's about parties, levels, character choices, very, very story-centric, obviously. You know, that kind of a thing. So yeah, for example, I would not call any of the Bethesda-style games, Morrowind, Oblivion, Fallout 3, to be CRPGs. I wouldn't call... see, the KOTORs is debatable. The KOTORs are very debatable because the KOTORs are like in between an action RPG and a CRPG. Dragon Age is also kind of in that same gulf in between the two, so maybe? I don't know. Something like Mass Effect has definitively left the CRPG range. You got it. And it is good to see you, Sal, there. Thank you again. So, you know, debatable. Tyranny would definitely be a CRPG, yes. Happy New Year, budda. Hang on, I'll have my seltzer water, so... Shh. Outer Worlds might be a CRPG. We don't know. It certainly seems to be leaning in that direction. And yeah, I know, right, King Bubble? So McCool mentions RTSs. I actually didn't mention any RTSs, mostly because there's just so many games I'm not sure to go with. But like if I was to pick one RTS, I would have to choose between Dune, the original Command & Conquer, the original Red Alert 2, Red Alert 3, Command & Conquer 3, the good one. I would have to choose between Warcraft 1, Warcraft 2, Warcraft 3, StarCraft 1, Total Annihilation. There are many RTSs that I think could use a proper remake. Of that list, though, if I'm being 100% honest, I'd probably go with Warcraft 1. Warcraft 1 done with StarCraft 2's engine, with the full story as has been developed in the Chronicles book. Sold. Here's $60. Take my money. Nope, StarCraft 1 has not had a remake. StarCraft 1 had a port. It was a good port, but it is still a port. Or a remaster, if you prefer. But I hate the word remaster because it's such a meaningless word. Port. It's much more definitive. Now, Vigilant asked a question. And that question is, why is Tazara insane? Now, the hard truth is, I don't actually know why Tazara is insane. I've been debating this for some time myself. I think it's because he's secretly an alien. That's my working theory right now. Thank you, Tazara. What would you like to put that towards? Or those towards, if you prefer. See, I don't agree with you on that, Port. Peter, excuse me. Your name is Port now. 2CE? Wait. Would I pay for premium for proper remake? Absolutely. And do you know why? Two reasons. First of all, because I like proper remakes. But second of all, and this is far more importantly, a proper remake is most of the work of making a new game. A true proper remake, remember, by definition, a proper remake means a good remake. Ergo, yeah, I heard about that, McCool. We'll see. But ergo, if that is something that is, a proper remake and therefore has all the work and effort put into it, they are effectively making a new game. They are making it with the design documents of the original game, but they're making a new game out of that. So all of the work and time and effort is still put as if this was a new game, and therefore it deserves the full $60, as long as it is proper. My opinion. Yeah, exactly. A well-done proper remake is a premium product, and it does deserve the full $60. That's just my opinion. Now, I'm sorry, Vigilant, I haven't answered your question first. Give me a second, Tazara. Let me get to Vigilant's question. So Vigilant really wants to figure out how this works. How will we know when a project is funded? When it goes up on the website, I will put it on the event and say, hey, this is when this is scheduled. Battlefield Gothic 2 When will we visually know when it's funded? When it goes up on the website. If more money does affect it when it's released, then put it towards Dark Messiah. Now, the answer to that is yes. As I said to Vigilant, I am tracking 2 figures when it comes to the funding for premiere runs and lore runs, and that is how many people and how much money. So, more money, more likely to happen. More people, more likely to happen. Both extremely likely to happen. That's why we have the color system. So, I will put that towards Dark Messiah, because that is in answer to your question.
Oh, welcome. Pay close attention. Hopefully you'll learn something.
I hope you understand, Vigilant. If you don't, just ask me. And please stop giving me money. I'll put that towards Dark Messiah. So, Tazara, what would you like to put those towards? Now that I've explained that, again. And many more times, I'm sure. Yeah, Warcraft 3 Reforged might be a proper remake. We don't know yet, it's not out yet, but it's leaning in that direction. Gold Tech. Funnily enough, I have in fact addressed that today. And that answer is, there's no real such thing as something being funded until it happens. Right? In other words, no, I don't want to be EA, please. It'd be nice to be fiscally, safe, but I don't want to be EA. Hi, Blue Walrus. Yes, they are. Basically, there is no funding total Gold Tech. We've removed that as a concept. It's not like when you guys put $100 towards this run, it's going to happen. That's not how that works. It's more like you could put money towards whatever you want to show interest, both in terms of the individual and the amount given, and that will then determine when things happen and if things happen. For example, there are plenty of things on the website right now that have like $2 towards them. Those runs are probably not going to happen. And then there's stuff that has like 150 towards them. That run's going to happen. Make sense? All right, now someone else just donated. Oh my god, and now people are subbing. Okay, it was Cord. First of all, thank you very much, Cord, for the $3. What would you like to put that towards? Second of all, thank you very, very much, Arjun Voss, for the sub. I do, as ever, much appreciate those subs. What would you like to put that towards? Okay, so Tazara wants to do... RE2. And... I lost it. It's gone! Hitman 2. There it is. People suggest runs. Yes, people suggest premiere runs. I, of course, am the final gateway on what can go up. I have to vet everything. That's my overall rule. If you suggest something, I'll say, okay, I'll look into it. And then I'll look into it, and I'll say, okay, yes, and then I'll put it up on the website. I actually have so I'm not accepting new stuff on the website right now, but if I'm being 100% honest with you guys, I actually have already had people donate to stuff not on the website. Now, I'm keeping track of it. I keep good records, don't worry. I've actually worked as an accountant before. So I actually have a side list of stuff that people have put towards that's not on the website, and that's just going to go ahead and sit there until we've gotten a little bit more through our backlog. Then I'll go ahead and add it to the website. Make sense? If things go on the website for a long time without donations, they get removed. Correct. If someone suggests, hey, Lore, you should play Minecraft. Just making something up here. It's a weird game. I just invented it. And nobody donates towards Minecraft for like 3 or 4 months, it's going to get removed from the site. We actually had for a bit there, we had several games in threat of that. In fact, I actually have already removed several from the list as a consequence of that. Sildeer, yes, watch the VOD. I'm sorry, it's at like the 19-minute mark in the VOD. I've just explained all this today. Twice. Now, someone else asked something I wanted to... there it is. Love Disney. What about Kingdom Hearts 3? Am I do a lore run up to Kingdom Hearts 3? No. However, assuming I have time, and I refuse to commit to this until I know I can do it, but the intent is I'm going to do a stream right before Kingdom Hearts 3 comes out. And that stream will be basically discussing and explaining the Kingdom Hearts series to date. And that stream... The reason I want to do that as a stream rather than a video is I want it to be interactive. I want to be able to explain things, to address questions, and to just talk about Kingdom Hearts. So that is something I want to do. I haven't put it up on the website yet because I haven't... I'm not sure I'm going to be able to put it up because I still have 6 videos to do this week. I will refund them if I have to max time, but I refuse to commit to something that I don't know I can do. I don't like saying I can do something and then not being able to. So that's the goal with that. That's where we're going with Kingdom Hearts. And I also want to say thank you, Cashel, for reducing your pledge on thing. No, I'm sorry. Okay. Next question. Right. Where's my notes? Here we go. So, this was a question that came on Thank you, Cord. I'm glad you're finally getting into the writing thing, by the way. I know you've been talking about that before. You've mentioned it on Discord several times, too, so I'm glad you're getting into it. And thank you very, very much. You didn't put it towards anything. What do you want to put it towards, man? So you want me to do something with tyranny. Well, a rumination...
Follow me. They all do.
Rumination's off the list. That's not happening. I'm just going to go ahead and say that right now. Not because I won't do a rumination ever, but because I won't do a rumination this year. All the ruminations for this year are already locked in. Now, that being said, a lore run of tyranny? I don't know if that's something that's doable. I'd have to think about that one. I'm really not sure how feasible that is. Thank you very, very much, Shaludo. I've put that towards Resident Evil 2. Thank you again. Cord is putting that towards Shadow of the Tomb Raider. I'll just put it right here. Cord 3786. So that's 4 towards Shadow of the Tomb Raider. I think I'm caught up. Okay. Next question for realsies. So this is a question that came in through Twitter. Where's my timestamp? God, I'm actually behind for once. This is why I wanted to start this stream early, and why I did start this stream early, by the way. So, question for Loreweek. What do you prefer for multimedia purposes? Properties like Star Trek and Star Wars that have a defined set of elements, or Final Fantasy, which has a set of elements reinterpreted multiple ways? I know, right, Macromano? I never get tired of it. So, the idea here being, do you want something where, like, for example, the Force is always the Force? Oh, that's actually a bad example. A Star Destroyer is always a Star Destroyer. Or do you want an example where a Star Destroyer can be multiple different things? Like, see how many different ways the Cid has been interpreted throughout Final Fantasy, or how many different ways Chocobos have been interpreted, or Moogles, or etc. Apparently that's Ethel's question. I do pay attention to my Twitter, I know, strange. So what do you guys think? Now, this is my planet, what are you talking about? Now, what Mandarton says is actually a valid point. Star Wars and Star Trek are both kind of not super contiguous. Like, TNG Season 2 to 6 or so is reasonably self-contiguous. But Star Trek with the rest of Star Trek doesn't line up at all. That being said, you know my answer. I'd pick the first one. I am a continuity hound. Continuity is just too important to me to want to not do it. I know many people over many years who have given many explanations for why continuity is a bad thing, and while I have heard their arguments and they even make sense, I just don't agree. I would always rather have a floss be a floss. There's a reason why I call the Imperium continuity the setting, is because that's the whole point of it, is that everything is self-contiguous throughout the entirety of the Imperium, and every work I've ever written sits within the same continuity. That is, of course, just my opinion, though. That being said, part of the question was also which one is more restrictive. Well, obviously the former is far more restrictive because the writers always have to keep in mind all of the continuity for everything forever. And they can't contradict that, which is a problem when a man in a tux just subscribes. It's just terrifying when that happens. Thank you very, very much, man in a tux. Would you like to put that towards anything in particular? Because if you have to, for example, let's presume Star Trek is a Final Fantasy. Hear me out. So, you know, you've got to have ships, space travel, warp drive, galactic science fiction thing, similar types of positions, via... in other words, hang on. In other words, all of the concepts of Star Trek, but they can be reinterpreted at will. I feel like there's actually a lot that can be done with that, creatively speaking. At that point, it's effectively a form of a reimagining, but one could argue that, for example, Final Fantasy IV is a reimagining of Final Fantasy III, and 5 of 4 and 6 of 5, right? That is a valid thing to say. And thank you, Cashel. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to call you out. I really didn't. I read the whole sentence before I realized what I was reading. So I apologize for that. Now I'm going to go ahead and say thank you. Here we go. So that, first of all, that was Man in a Tux. Man in Tux. There's no towards Devil May Cry 5. You got it. Actually, I'm just going to say DMC. It's easier to keep track of. There we go. And then Zvia. Thank you, as ever, very, very much for the donation. What would you like to put that towards? And I feel like did I miss another one? I didn't miss another one. We're cool. We're cool. We're caught up. Machinarium. You got it. Lowercase b la. Machinarium. Done. Thank you again very, very much. Now, Leander has an idea. Let me just go ahead and say that the Doctor regenerating is one of the most brilliant things that show has ever come up with. And I mean that with total sincerity. That was a brilliant move that is probably the single biggest reason why Doctor Who has endured for, what, 50 years or whatever we're up to at this point? You know, that is an enormously wonderful tool in the toolkit of the writers. They can keep the show going and maintain continuity while effectively reinventing itself regularly. And that's awesome. That was a brilliant idea. It's still the Doctor, it just isn't the Doctor. And that cross between the two basically satisfies at least part of both camps. Because Doctor Who tends to maintain a little bit of continuity within its own bubble of each Doctor, and a little bit of crossing over for both, but for the most part is effectively still reinventing itself. It's about as close as you could get to having both camps on this one, as you can get. I know people are making jokes and fun. Yeah, there's no continuity in Doctor Who. That is a faithful and true statement, but it's like saying there's no continuity in Star Trek, which is true, but also not true. There is continuity in Star Trek. Like, I'm not even talking about Deep Space Nine. As I've been going back through TNG, I've been noticing a surprising amount of what I like to call background or setting continuity that's been happening continuously throughout the series. Basically, ever since Michael Piller took the reins, which was in Season 3, up until where I'm at now, which is Season 5. So it's not like there isn't continuity. It's just that the further you look back, the more it breaks apart, which is also true with Star Trek, by the way. But anyways, I was mentioning in Discord, you know, as Star Trek fans, we're very familiar with ejecting things from continuity. we're very accustomed to that sensation. Or do you guys actually think that Kirk and Spock regularly made time travel missions to study Earth history? Because that was a thing in TOS. Or how about they regularly went to the edge of the galaxy just to see what was out there? Because that was a thing in TOS. Etc., etc. I'm not even bringing in Spock's brain. Lord of the Rings doesn't really, as strange as this may sound, doesn't really have that much continuity. I mean, it does, but it's much more contained. Lord of the Rings really only consists of 5 books. Silmarillion, which is an encyclopedia, the Trilogy, and Hobbit, and that is it. There's a bunch of unconnected works which have been developed over the years since then. There's a bunch of stuff that was done by his son and his grandson, but really, Lord of the Rings is much more contained than most of the other things we're talking about. Even if you just count the AU of Star Wars, just the AU still has more continuity to it, more works towards it than Lord of the Rings does. So I hope that answers your question, Ethel. Sorry, we got sidetracked a little bit there. Let's do the next question really quick. How about a fun question? Fun question. You guys like fun questions, right? I like fun questions. So, all of a sudden, hello, Korora. All of a sudden, someone shows up and says, "Hi, so you can build your own functional mecha suit. Go." Like, the full question is, how would you design it? Is it more lean towards offense or defense? What kind of weapons would it have, etc.? There's a lot of ways you can go with this. That's why it's such an open-ended question. That's why I just said go. I mean, that is true, Zuludo. A cup holder? Absolutely. I want to destroy the universe in style. Orbital frame. Warhammer 40k Titans Town? No. Let's keep it within reasonability, guys. Let's keep it within reasonability. It's a mech suit, so Iron Man, you know, or Black Panther. Not an Atlas or a dire wolf, you know. Or the Iron Spider suit. That's another one. AGDQ starts in 50 minutes, so I gotta hurry up. Go ahead, McCool. Go ahead. The official schedule link. Give me a second. I'll pull that up. First game they're playing is Hollow Knight. And then Kirby and the Amazing Mirror, Donkey Kong Country 1, Mario Kart DS. And I'm going to be watching all of those. Then Serious Sam, I might bow out for that one. Then Mega Man 02, Majora's Mask, Portal, Metal Gear Solid 2, etc., etc. You can see the whole list there. Some good stuff. Oh, hang on. I just got a question. I've just been informed. I have the most important question in the universe in my Tumblr. It says, who would win, the Borg or anyone else? Now, okay. Does the spawn armor count? I would say no, because that is very definitively magic and kind of breaks everything. The Borg appearance in Enterprise. If I'm being honest, I haven't watched Regeneration in a long time, so I'm going to go ahead and basically say I don't know, McCool. It was one of the better episodes for the earlier Star Trek Enterprise stuff. But it's still an early Enterprise thing, so it was directed and written by people who are actually talented, though. Ask me again when I rewatch it, which I will be doing for the show at some point. Now, obviously you want something that's both defensive and offensive. Well, I mean, obviously you can't have both of those, because otherwise you're doomed. Thank you very, very much, Juicy. I'm glad you enjoyed. I hear as many compliments as hates for the WoW Chronicles thing, so I'm glad you're in the not hate category. If I'm being honest, I would probably make my mech suit designed around utility and agility, so not really particularly offensive or defensive. In other words, to be completely blunt about it, I'd probably go in the direction of Iron Man suit. I'm not sure which one, I'd have to think about that, but that's kind of the direction I'd go in. Something that is designed to allow me to fly, to scan, to communicate, to look stuff up. You know, it's a very utility thing. And that is probably the direction I go with. Because, I mean, otherwise I'd just pick a direwolf. Fully loaded out with ER Clanner PPCs. Possibly Zed Slayer. I don't know. Okay. I'm up to frame 600. That's how much I got last night. In my opinion, no, Casual, but I haven't rewatched it in some time. Keep that in mind. So that would be my answer to the mech suit. As much as I would love to go overboard with it, for questions like these, I try to keep myself more limited because that makes the question more interesting. You know, for example, if I wanted a suit that was really, really super defense-oriented, I can't think of the name of that suit, but there is a suit that is that, where it's basically just a tank suit, just ka-kong, and it's just designed to withstand all the power. That doesn't have as much use, and then there's the one with the full firepower. Okay, geek out time. How many of you guys like Mega Man? Hear me out, I'm going somewhere with this. So one of the things that I've always kind of mentally done is tried to interpret Mega Man into something that makes sense in terms of real life physics or real life concepts. And so one of the things I've always done is kind of made a bit of a gradient. That Mega Man. interesting timing. Hang on. I actually closed the donation page. I didn't think I would be getting any more. It's from Catabo. Shugabagoo! I suddenly like Catabo for some reason. I don't know why. It's just, I'm really interested in him. You're the best, Catabo. Thank you, Catabo. Thank you very, very much. As ever, that really is appreciative. That money is basically, at this point in time, all that PayPal money is basically going to be going towards helping me move. And making sure that I can afford said place I live at, and blah, blah, blah. So thank you very, very much. What would you like to put that towards? The reason I brought up Mega Man is I'm going to use Mega Man 2 as an example here. Or actually 3. Mega Man 2 and 3. So I always like to think that some of the Robot Masters are more inclined towards A than B, even though nothing in the game really leads itself towards that way. Perfect example. Hardman, over in Mega Man 3, always struck me as someone who is really high defense, right? Like, I look at him and I look at his design and I think that's someone who could take a hit. Who could take 50 hits, right? So that's kind of the defensive side of the mech suit question. Like, imagine there was a person inside a Hardman suit, and he is there, and he's the tank. He draws attention to himself, and he just gets hit, and he's fine. By contrast, to use the opposite example, for offensive, I would look at someone like Crashman. I'm stumbling over my own pronunciation. Crashman from Mega Man 2, who is someone who just has guns and death and could just destroy the heck out of everything he's looking at, but ultimately is much weaker in every other respect. He has no utility, he has no speed or agility, and of course he can only take a couple of hits before he's gone, right? So that's kind of how I think of this particular type of question. Just my take on it, of course, but I would rather have someone like, well, Quickman than someone like Crashman than someone like Hardman. Make sense? You got it, Catabo. I'll put that here. I'll just write you down 3 times. We'll make it easy. So that's DMC 5, Ghosts of I need to make sure I spell this right. Shima. There we go. And Sekiro. Done. Thank you again. So yeah, instead of Iron Man, Glass Cannon Man. Basically correct. I mean, obviously Crashman could still take a couple of hits. If you shot him with a gun, it probably wouldn't do much. But if you shot Crashman with a bazooka, that would do some serious damage. Make sense? You know, it's kind of like the recent Aquaman film. This isn't a spoiler. There's a scene where he gets shot with a gun, and he's just like, okay. And then there's a scene he gets shot with an underslug grenade to the chest, and that actually hurts. Similar concept. What are you linking me, Leander? And, I mean, it would be fun, but not a lot of use, you know? Oh my gosh. I mean, you're right, Malachor. I'm not going to argue that. Which place did I decide to go to in the end? Hazardous? If I'm being honest, I haven't decided yet. I have a few more months to decide, and more to the point, I don't know if I make enough money to qualify at the place with better internet right now. We'll see. Right now, I guess I can be 100% honest with you guys, right now I'm basically waiting to see if my income goes up enough to help justify that move, and if it doesn't, then I've got a cheaper place I'm looking at. I have other questions, so let's go ahead and move on quickly, because we only got about 40 minutes left here. So, anyways, that's the mech question. Next question, how many of you guys like Mortal Kombat? None of you? Okay, I understand. No, I mean, I've actually followed the Mortal Kombat lore for some time. Of course I have, it's me. You know, the first run-through of the Mortal Kombat lore, and then the second run-through of the Mortal Kombat lore, and there's arguably a third. Let's just ignore that for the moment. So, Netherlands walks up to you and says, hey, I am handing you the rights to the Mortal Kombat franchise. You have to make a product. It has to fit one or both of the timelines. What do you do? Notice this product does not have to be a game. So where do you go for it? What do you go with it? Mortal Kombat lore run. Okay, so this guy is actually secretly the father of this chick, and she's actually basically a different gendered clone of this guy. And this chick, well, she's actually made out of the souls of the dead in this direction, and she was actually the queen of this other world. She's actually a good person, but she was enslaved by this guy. Someone go kill Sylder for me, just really quick. Scorpion does have an interesting arc, I'll agree with you on that. Which is funny. You look at Scorpion and it's like, okay, so he's an evil skeleton. He probably has, I'd say, the third most effort put into making him a character. Right upside there with Psychotic. Thank you, Psychotic. I do hope things are smoothing out for you, financially speaking. Right up there with Liu Kang, and I guess that would be the second Sub-Zero. What I usually think of him as the real Sub-Zero, but there's actually 3 Sub-Zeros, but the second one is the one that is the most common Sub-Zero, the one that actually has had the most development put into him. Because the first Sub-Zero is just an evil bastard, and is actually Noob Saibot, if I'm remembering correctly. Spoilers. Sorry, I just realized spoilers. Yeah. So I was correct. Sub 1 is Noob Saibot. I have to admit, I'm not as versed as I used to be on the Mortal Kombat lore. I haven't actually followed it since before 10. I just kind of fell out when they did the thing. No! I will defeat He-Man! I have to admit, I would probably go back to the original timeline, just because I love continuity that much. And because I think the second timeline was bullcrap. It's just my opinion. I'm sorry, but I really do think the way they made the second timeline was bullcrap. And I know arguably there is no second timeline. There's arguably just one timeline and a vision. But I would go back to the original. That would be my first thought. As far as what I would make, that is a lot trickier. I'm always in favor of stretching out with regards to genres, and Mortal Kombat has only very rarely stretched out outside of the fighting genre. We had that terrible Sub-Zero's Adventure game. I don't remember the name of that one. I only played that one briefly on the N64. There's also the pseudo-RPG they made, which I want to say was PS3. I'm not actually sure about that one. I did play that one. I just don't remember what I played that on. So, you know, I'm trying to think, like, what other directions we can branch out with a fighting genre. Because, honestly, I feel like there's more you could do with that. Yeah, true enough, Shadow Machine. The original movie was a bad movie that I enjoyed. I have no doubt in saying that. The second Mortal Kombat movie was a bad movie that I did not enjoy. Oh, I forgot about that. You're right. There was the Special Forces beat 'em up. See, admittedly, a side-scroller beat 'em up just sort of feels like a natural progression of this kind of a thing. I have to admit, though, I kind of like the idea of stretching it into basically a fighter RPG. I've talked for years about the idea of basically using different genres as the combat of existing RPG mechanics. So the idea of basically designing a Mortal Kombat RPG where the fights are fights, you know, straight out of Mortal Kombat is something that appeals to me, except with additional variables built in, obviously, to accommodate the RPG thing. So I think that's probably the direction I'd go with. Armageddon, that's another one. Was Deception the one where you had, like, the campaign mode and you went through the maps? God, I don't even remember. I haven't played that in forever. Anyways, that's probably the direction I'd go in. But I haven't talked about story yet. Where would I go story-wise? Yeah, like Dragon's Crown. That's a good way to put that. So, where to go with the story? Because I already said we're sticking back to the original timeline. Now, well, no stats, Caspian. So, okay, Caspian does bring up a good point. A lot of people associate RPG mechanics with stats, and with good reason, because that is what RPG mechanics generally means. I'm using the word incorrectly. I like more the idea of customizing your kit thanks to the RPG mechanics, rather than your output. Make sense? Let me put this to you in a different direction. How many of you played Dissidia, or any of the Dissidias, except for the new one, which is crap? In the older Dissidias, you could decide, okay, so this button is going to use this move. And this button's going to use this move, and this button's going to use this other move. Now, there were actually stats involved as well, but ignore the stats, because that's what I mean. Being able to use the RPG mechanics and leveling up and talent trees to say, I want long fireball to be this attack, I want secondary uppercut, which goes a little bit further than the normal one, instead of the one that goes straight up, to be my up attack, etc., etc. Make sense? So rather than I hit harder, I hit differently, and then it is on me to decide exactly how I physically play, still making it skill-based. A Dark Souls third person. Mortal Kombat Metroidvania. I don't know how that would work, Leander. Yeah, exactly, Hazardous. A Jedi Empire Star Mortal Kombat would be very cool, I agree with that. Anyways, I don't know what I'd do with the story. I'm really torn on that one. I like the idea of maybe making it so that... Hi, Paibanu, excuse me, saying your name wrong here. I like the idea of basically doing like a long-term story. Maybe a story that literally branches multiple of the previous games, and basically does a better job of showcasing the story. Let's be honest with ourselves, how much of the story of Mortal Kombat 1 is in the game? Because there is a story there. But how much of that is right there on camera, right? So I kind of like the idea of seeing like bits and pieces of, say, the end of Mortal Kombat 1, and, you know, actually explaining what the hell was going on, leading almost immediately into Mortal Kombat 2, which, of course, then immediately leads into Mortal Kombat 3, because those three did form a very cohesive trilogy, story-wise. It's just, I don't blame you if you don't know any of that, because it wasn't in the... Very little of that was in the game. We just... Suddenly there's a new protagonist. I got a plan, Scorpion! So I suppose that's my final answer. I agree, the Mortal Kombat trilogy is good stuff. Test your might. Dun, 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 dun. I'd play the music, but I'd get copy-wronged to hell. Real quick, favorite fighters in the first three Mortal Kombats? Anybody? For 1, for me it would be Sub-Zero. For 2, that's a lot trickier, but I think I'm going to go with Reptile. And for 3, I'm going to go with the real Sub-Zero. Yeah, I know. Dutch to Vanderzero. Sub-Zero, Raiden, Sub-Zero. Scorpion. Scorpion was actually a favorite of mine in 2 as well, but I usually wrecked as Reptile more than as Scorpion. Sub-Zero, Sub-Zero, Cyrax and Cabal, yeah. Scorpion for 1, Katana for 2, Smoke, that was in 3, I believe. Devora, I don't know who that is. Scorpion, Reptile, Liu Kang, excuse me, I can say his name. Katana, yeah, she was pretty mean. Sub-Zero, Scorpion, and Katana. What are you here for? Copy wrong. There are different Sub-Zeros. So there's Sub-Zero, a.k.a. Noob Saibot, and then there's Sub-Zero, a.k.a. Sub-Zero. One of those Sub-Zeros, to simplify this excessively, one of the Sub-Zeros is evil, and one of the Sub-Zeros is not. And that's really the difference between the two. Other than the massive amount of characterization, backstory, and the fact that one of the Sub-Zeros actually went to the Nether Realm and was only able to exist there thanks to his nature as being an evil creature, since only evil creatures can exist in that dimension, blah, 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 blah. But yeah, then there's the good Sub-Zero, which is the one we play as in 3, I know. I forget if he was in 2. I actually don't remember when we finally were introduced to the good Sub-Zero. Baraka. I knew a friend who would absolutely destroy me as Baraka every time he played. Just every time. Hi. That's true. Shujinko was also in the Nether Realm. And, I can't remember her name. Basically, yes, Kay. High five! Aww. Jax. I always wanted to get good as Jax because I was really good at Balrog back in Street Fighter. And I've always had a thing for boxing in general because I love boxing in real life, and I just enjoy the boxing art style. It's just something that's interesting to me. So I tried to get into Jax, and it just never worked for me for some reason. I don't know. I know Jax is not a boxer, but that's why I tried to get into Jax. I also tried to get into... Oh, God, what's his name? The boxer in Killer Instinct. I can't think of his name. But no, I was a Jade player in Killer Instinct. Jade and Riptor. Nobody said Shang Tsung. I gotta be honest, I never liked playing as Shang Tsung. Like, it was like they were like, okay, we've got a cool thing, but we have to nerf him to hell, otherwise he's going to be overpowered. Okay. TJ Combo, that's him. Thank you. Ow, ow, ow. I agree, Malachor. I agree. Reptile. Liu Kang. Yeah, nobody... You're right, Minibees. No one has mentioned Liu Kang. Not a one. I didn't either. I can't stand playing as Liu Kang. He is just not my style at all. I also liked Glacius back in the original Killer Instinct. I did have one friend of mine who liked to play as Liu Kang. He wasn't good at him. He just liked playing him. And there's only one reason why. Because, and I'm quoting him here, he liked playing a turkey. Anyways. Let's move on to the next question really quick here, because we are running a little low on time. So, how many of you guys like comic books? I assume at least some of you do, since you're watching me. Specifically Superman, or Supes, as I like to call him. So, Q shows up, says, hey. And all of a sudden, you are in charge. You are basically the mainliner of a new Superman film trilogy. What are your ideas? How do you plan out the trilogy? What would the antagonist be for each? Would they be more a physical antagonist or a metaphysical antagonist? And would any of his rogues gallery make an appearance? Now, this is actually an engaging question to me. This is one of the reasons I wanted to share this on stream, is because Supes, I've said this many times before, Supes is hard to write for. Too many people make the mistake, I've talked about this many times, too many people make the mistake of writing Supes as the super indestructible Doom guy. Now, he is, but if you sit down and you make that your character arc, or you make that what your story is about, you don't have anything, right? You need to do something with the character to write Supes interestingly. Now, people have over the years. There's actually quite a few Superman stories I've enjoyed across the years. You know, All Stars, Red Sun. I can't think of the name of the one where he goes up against the Suicide Squad. I can't think of the name of it. Oh, that would be horrible, said Slayer. Hello, Takoida. We're talking about Supes. So, yeah, All-Star Superman is one of my favorites, by far. I love All-Star Superman. There's another really good Superman story. I can't think of the... It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Point being... So, we're doing a movie. Now, I feel like I've been talking about this more and more. The older I get, the more this seems to be true. Movies are a very inherently limited storytelling medium. And I've just gotten to the idea over the years that I'm just not a good movie person. Making. Like, if you sit down and say, Lore, I want you to make a movie about such and such, my first thought is, can I make it anything else instead? That's literally the first thing that runs through my head. Well, I would do a better job of a Superman game, or a Superman TV show, or Superman books. You want to make a movie? Okay. Because I'm not into that. I don't know why. It just doesn't work in my head. But one of the things that does fit between Supes and movie is scale. One of the only things that movies tend to do well is the fact that they are like, Whong! You know, for all of the many flaws of the recent Superman films from, oh God, I can't think of the name of it all of a sudden. The first one, not the first Zack Snyder one, and then BVS and all that. The one and only thing they really did well with regards to Supes was making him exactly as horrifically overpowered as he should be. Man of Steel, thank you. Man of Steel. Because Supes is horribly overpowered, and a movie is a good way to show that. A movie is a good way to show, you know? American Alien. I'm gonna have to look into that. I'll ask my friend Pax. He's got a huge collection. I can borrow it from him. Make Superman 64 too, except good. So I agree with you. Superman Prime. Also, hi, Cadet White Swan. Sorry, I didn't say hi. How do you make a interesting Superman game? Very carefully, but it's something I've considered many, many years. Now, so movie. We haven't actually answered the core question yet. So we're making a trilogy. That's the worst part. It's not even just one film. It's 3 films. Okay. First and foremost, let me just get this out there. No origin stories. We're done with them. We don't need them anymore. We don't need to go in that direction. We're done. We all know where Soups comes from, and unless we're doing Red Sun or another alternate origin story, then no. First point. I'm just going to go ahead and spitball here because I've kind of thought about this a little bit. I like the idea, picture this as the timeline. I like the idea of doing this with the stories. Basically started off in what's it called? The era of the League. Not the Justice League, the other league. The Super Mega League, you know? The league of, here's tons and tons of superheroes across the galaxy. God, help me out, guys. The Society. Is that the Society? Maybe that's not the Society. That doesn't sound right. It's the Legion. It's the Legion, I think. I have no idea if I'm Bacon Eater. I'm not into horror movies in general, so I haven't looked into it too much. But yeah, Legion is what I'm thinking. I'm pretty sure it's the Legion. I would start it off in the era of the Legion. Have the film be about Soups. Basically, how do I phrase this? Make it really, really focused on how the character has developed as a consequence of the fact that he's outlived basically everyone at this point. That he's still going, but he's also not as necessary anymore because the Legion is basically doing all the work for him. That we've gotten to the point now where he can effectively retire and has no idea how to deal with that or what to do with himself. Make it a heavy character piece, in other words, very character-centric. Think Logan. Not that dark, that's a little bit too much. But, think that, in that direction. The retired guy who can still do it, but doesn't really want to. Start there. And something happens. I don't know what. Again, this is something I've only been spitballing, so I haven't thought about details. But have something happen that basically requires him to go back. Yeah, like Old Snake. So he starts off at that point. He starts off as Old Man Soups, right? Ends up having to go back as a consequence of the first film, or rather, as a consequence of whatever happens in the first film, he has to go back and ends up back here, which makes it to the point where he is now, okay, in an era which he remembers but doesn't really fit in anymore. Make the second film be a lot about, does Superman even age? Depends on the writer. Generally, no. And so he has to go back to the future. I mean, back to the past. God damn it. Back to the past. Make the second film be more... The usual approach is establishment, defeat, victory. That's the trilogy formula. And I don't want to subvert that just to subvert that, but the dog really hates that idea, apparently. I liked Days of Future Past. But the key distinction, and I'd have to sit down and think about details here. I don't want him to go back because I have to save the universe. Don't make Brainiac show up and say, I have won and succeeded in killing all the Legion, and then have Superman go back to stop him. Don't do that. A, I hate those kind of stories, and B, they've been done before. No. Make Superman go back willingly and voluntarily, specifically because of some character-centric reason. He wants to see Lois again, or he wants to see himself again, or he wants to try and figure out why he's bothering. Make the conclusion of the first film, make him want to go back for him, not to save the world. Okay? Second film, we can go ahead and make the second film the dark one if we want to. I do kind of lean against that because I don't feel that fills the formula here. Instead, I would have the second film actually shift focus from future Superman to present Superman. Have it be Soups and his prime, and have the second film be a little bit closer to a traditional Superman story, except Old Soups is in the background there. You know, he's a regular feature of the story, not interfering on a physical superpowered level, but rather being a character acting through the acts as they're happening. The second film would have to have a more typical villain, probably something along the lines of Lex. One way or another, the second film would end in a way that basically sets up the third film's villain, Brainiac. I'm sorry, but the third film has to be Brainiac. There are so many villains that exist in Superman's thing. You know, there's Zod, there's Darkseid or Darkseid, depending on what you prefer. There's, I can't even think of his name, big dude from another world. But no, Brainiac. In my opinion, Brainiac is the ideal fit for a Superman villain. If you want to go scale, and remember, this is a film. So you want scale, you want the big villain, you go with Brainiac. I would also probably want Jeffrey Combs to play him again because he's awesome. No, Big Dude is the guy who trained him in preparation for the Imperiex arc. And I can't remember his damn name. As soon as someone says it, I'm going to remember it. The letter L. No! Mongol. That is it. Mongol. Galactus is Marvel, I think. God, I'm not actually sure about that one. I would probably like Manchester to Black to be in it, but he would have to be in the second film if he was there at all. Anyways, that's the general arc I'd take the three films. I don't remember... Like I said, I haven't thought about actual specifics and details. I agree with you, Mandarton, on that point, but... issue 1000 of Action Comics? I'll have to look at that one, too. I don't know. I'd have to think out specifics. I wouldn't put Darkseid in it at all. I don't like Darkseid. I have never liked Darkseid. He has been, in my opinion, he's been written well like twice ever. Lex... I have to admit, if I'm being honest, I prefer the Lex who isn't a straight-up villain. I prefer the Lex who's a more complex villain. The DCAU, right? Lex Luthor there is a bad guy. He is a villain. But he's not a, and then I will poison the water supply. No, there's more to him than that. There's a character there in addition to, I'm evil. You know. I prefer that take on Lex than most other takes on Lex. Yeah, exactly. How many times has Lex been cured of cancer? Stop keeping the kryptonite on you, you jackass. I have to admit, I'm not a huge fan of most of Soups' Rogues Gallery as well. As someone earlier mentioned, Metallo. Like if I was to sit down, this is just my opinion, of course. If I was to sit down and pick out the Soups Rogues Gallery that I actually enjoy, there's Brainiac when he's written correctly. And I'm not sure which one. I guess that would be Brainiac the original, because then Brainiac, the other numbers are different. So Brainiac, when he's done well, oh God, I can't think of his name. Cyborg. I can't think of his name. Shaw? Was that it? Again, someone who has been written both well and badly, but I do think he's at least interesting as a character. Manchester Black. Sorry, I knew there was someone I was just trying to think of. Manchester Black is awesome. I really like Manchester Black. It is Hank Henshaw. I was right. Well, you know what I mean, Mandarton. What I don't mean is Brainiac 19 or Brainiac 87, or the good Brainiac, which I forget what number he is. The dog really likes Manchester Black. I like Zod sometimes. I have seen Zod good and bad. When Zod... what's his name? Oh, God, I can't think of his name. He played the villain in Oblivion. He played the Chancellor in Phantom Menace. And he played Zod. And he's actually probably the only Zod portrayal I really enjoy. Terrence Stamp, that's him. Even the dog likes Terrence Stamp. I think as much as that film was corny and cheesy, I think Terrence Stamp added a very legitimate an amount of actual pathos to the film. You know what I mean? Made it a little more believable. I also kind of agree with Takoida. There are very few individual villains I think would work. This is why I mentioned Brainiac, actually, since Brainiac's power is not that he himself is a match for Supes. It's that there's him, and then there's his everything else. You know, he comes after people with a planet, for God's sakes. Or a super doom ship. Oh my god. Vandal Savage. So I liked Savage in the DCAU, but I have read too much of the comics to take Savage seriously in the comics. There's only so much you can do with someone who deliberately has as much sex as possible to have as many children as possible so he can eat them. I'm sorry, but there's limits. Funnily enough, that'll actually segue into our final topic, by the way. Someone earlier mentioned, I don't remember, I think it was Plutonia. Someone earlier mentioned how to make a good Superman game is to not make it a villain he has to overcome. I agree completely, by the way. I like the idea of a Superman game that focuses more on gameplay about being really, really precise. Having to slide in and catch someone as they're falling without hurting them or damaging the nearby terrain. Trying to stop a falling plane without cracking the plane in half, and so forth and so on. Challenging the skill of Superman rather than the strength of Superman. I feel like that would be a more interesting gameplay style. And of course, every now and again have a guy you punch down. You know, you gotta have your fights, but I would focus more of the gameplay on trying to be precise and skill-based and trying to save people rather than trying to defeat people. That's how I would approach a Superman game. It would mean a lot of trial and error. It would mean designing that game would be very difficult. I would also, if I'm being honest, I would probably make it a mechanic for how much collateral you do, affecting, maybe not the direction of the story, because branching story is, as ever, a very difficult thing to actually accomplish, but affect the flavor of the story. Almost Infamous style. Any of you play any of the Infamous games? You know, people being like, oh, he's awesome, or I really like him, or putting up signs saying how great he is, you know? Or, oh god, it's him, no, please, run! And people's reaction changing to you based on how successful you've been in avoiding collateral damage and not hurting the people you're trying to save. Just a little stuff like that, right? I've been thinking about a Superman game for years, so forgive me for having this off the top of my head. Riddler versus Superman. Hang on. Okay, I hear him talking. He's right there. Fung! Anyways. So I do have one last topic here. It's not a question. It's just a topic. Because I swear this does actually... Yeah, exactly, Superman. Right? This does actually, excuse me, tie into what we were just talking about. Okay, Caspian. And yeah, exactly, Mega. So, how many of you guys care about Harry Potter? Bonus question. How many of you already know what I'm going to talk about? Or at least the base point. I mean, the only good Superman game I've ever played was Saints Row 4. That's not a joke. I mean, a lot of people say that as a meme. No, that is actually the only good Superman game I've ever played. And you're not Superman in that game. Oh, you know where I'm going. You know where I'm going. J.K. Rowling has been adding to her world after the series is finished.
Your dedication will be rewarded.
The Lich King just showed up one day, and Harry's like, Expelliarmus! And the Frostmourne just flies off, and then Harry picks up Frostmourne. I'm sorry, that sounds like an awful fanfic. It's from Trayfin. Thank you very, very much, Trayfin. I do as ever appreciate it. I'm glad you're liking the TNG and the DS9 stuff. I will put that towards DMC5. Speaking of which, make sure these are in stone, which they are. You're a Lich King, Harry. Oh, no boy lives forever. That would be what Voldemort says. No boy lives forever. Anyways, okay, so yeah. So, this is actually a fairly large topic. That's why I'm hesitating. The thing that prompted this was her discussion about how people in the Harry Potter universe, prior to the invention of toilets and indoor plumbing, would just go to the bathroom wherever, and then they would just and magic away the refuse. There's two problems with this, and I want to discuss both of these. The first thing is one of the things... I'm sorry, Plutonia. I'm not making this up. You can look this up. I'm not making this up. The first problem is someone who has finished a work continuing to add to it. Now, that's not necessarily a problem. As has been pointed out, many people do that and have done that over the years for various works of fiction. The problem is, I don't know what the hell is going through J.K. Rowling's mind. Because world building is exactly that. It's about developing the world. Now, I want to ask you very seriously and literally, what does this thing, which I'm not going to go ahead and say again for the sake of those eating, but whether or not she added this to the story or not, what does this change? What does this do? What does this add? World building, okay, there's two types of world building. Above the hood and below the hood. That's how I like to think of it. Below the hood is the stuff you're not really supposed to see. Below the hood is stuff that you, the author, in my opinion, should continue to design and develop to explain the nature of your world. Let me use a direct example. I have a setting called The Imperium. Now, in The Imperium, I had to sit down and spend a lengthy amount of time, across quite a bit of time, and I'm still idly debating myself every now and again. I have to think about how healing magic works. Because it's easy to say, cure 5, and your wounds go away, but what specifically is happening? What actual action is being taken to alter the nature of this person's wound? How does it determine what is injured? How does it determine how to fix it? What blueprint is it using in order to regenerate it? Is it literally rewinding it? Etc., etc., etc. Healing magic is something that most settings don't even go into, but as a setting creator, I think should be gone into, at least under the hood. Because you need to understand how your setting works in order to properly design it. In order to understand how A interacts with B interacts with C, you need to be able to understand why they work the way they do. My opinion as a world builder, okay? So that kind of under-the-hood world building is the kind of thing that does need to be thought about. To wit, one of the questions that did have to be decided is, what exactly were people using for restrooms in the older days? That is a question that should be answered under the hood, in my opinion. You see, Hazardous? And yeah, Eingrad, the rewinding time thing, I've heard that several times before. But anyways, point being, I think you have to decide this stuff. So I think she should have decided, under the hood, whether this should have happened or not. But then we get to whether or not under the hood needs to be over the hood. Under the hood matters for when it matters. If there's a specific circumstance where, I don't know, healing magic isn't working, or it's a race he's never encountered before, or it's someone who literally, the nature and makeup of their body doesn't function the way other people's bodies do, you now need that under-the-hood information to decide what happens over the hood. Make sense? That's the whole point of under the hood. So the car keeps running. That's the nature of the analogy. So that the car keeps running. So when you turn the wheel this way, you know what's happening under the hood, right? So again, I'm with that. I do think that sort of thing should be developed. Why do we need to know the specifics of why this pump interacts with this pump over here? Because that's the relative equivalent of what she has revealed to us with this new bit of information. Right? So why did she suddenly feel the need? So this is the first problem. Why did she feel the need to share this with us at all, considering, as I feel like I've already made clear, it doesn't change anything. It doesn't matter. It would be like me saying to you guys, okay, so, I don't know, I can't even make up something. Here is the specific biological process that happens when cells are merged with other cells to create cross-species, mating. Because I did have to think about that when it came to the Imperium. You don't need to know that, unless you have a specific question regarding that, right? You... Yes, by the way, as Plaka says, in case you guys think I am making this up, they really did just relieve themselves, and I quote, wherever they stood. Which is the... Yeah. So, why reveal this? Why go out of their way to explain something that doesn't change or affect anything? It's the first problem. There is a second problem. Problem number 2. Hey, this is real life. I just realized I just said that real life is a problem. What the hell?
Pay close attention. Hopefully you'll learn something.
Hang on. That's from Cord, who says, I hate you in your stupid face. I'm sorry, Cord. I know my face is very stupid. I do. But I do appreciate the donation nonetheless. Shadow of the Tomb Raider? No, the problem is this is real life. Now, this is actually a fairly large topic, and I've got about 4 minutes to talk about it, so let's just run through this as quickly as possible here. How many of you guys... Thank you, Cord. How many of you guys have seen a thing where someone has come up with an in-universe explanation that's still gross or uncomfortable or whatever out of universe? I'm just going to say the Twilight series. Just to I'm not going to go into specifics, but just to say one thing, right? Let me get to my point as quickly as I can, rather than just really dragging this one out. Whenever you're writing fiction, you must always keep real life in mind. Just because you say something that makes perfect sense in character and makes perfect sense in universe, you should still keep in mind out of universe, real life, when designing it, because real people will be reading, watching, playing your work. Now, I'm not saying that should necessarily restrict you beyond reason, but I do think that's something that too many writers don't do. I think it's something too many writers just decide, well, this makes perfect sense in character, therefore this is why it is, without thinking for even a millisecond as to why it is that this is kind of horrible in real life. Oh, well, it's fiction, it doesn't matter. Yes, it does matter, because real people are watching, reading, playing it. I feel this is the second flaw with revealing this information, because, hey, this is gross to real people, and because I have already seen multiple people who have already tried to defend the nature of how wizards would just go wherever they were. I'm not even kidding. I have already heard people leap to the defense, and the defense is always the same type of defense. Well, it's fiction. In this fictional setting, well, yeah, but what about from a real-life perspective? No, but it's fiction. Okay. And because I never like to criticize without giving my own alternative thoughts, if she really wanted to do this, why not do it the other way? Why not say that wizards invented plumbing? Not in the sense of what we consider modern plumbing, of course, but say that once upon a time with mages were like, man, we have to deal with this excrement problem. Why don't we go ahead and make a specific room where we have an enchanted seat that we have magicked in order to do this? And over time, either wizards deliberately shared it with, or muggles kind of caught on to the same idea, one way or the other. And as a consequence, human beings came up with their own form of plumbing. Bam! None of the gross factor. Actually kind of matters for the setting, barely. Still doesn't really need to be shared, but at least that actually kind of makes something of it. Because now we see how the wizards have a effect on the Muggle world, even if they're trying not to, which could lead to some of the attitudes in the more recent era of why it is that the wizard society as a whole has decided to try and have the wall of division between wizards and Muggles. Bam! That took me like 2 minutes to come up with. No, I do not, Joludo. But I suppose it depends, based on multiple different things. Anyways, I just wanted to discuss that in brief, because I felt like there was an actual topic there, like I said, because I don't know what the hell is going through J.K. Rowling's head at this point, other than a lot of money. Like, lots of money. The woman is stupidly rich. I could take care of everyone I know, probably including all of my viewers, for the rest of their lives after the amount of money that woman has. Anyways. She might be insane. I've heard that theory. I really have. I don't know. I just think she needs to hand off the new series to her ghostwriters and enjoy her life. I'm going to go ahead and pop off here and start the restream. Thank you, everyone, for joining me. We're going to go ahead and be restreaming AGDQ 2019 for the rest of the week. So I do hope that you guys enjoy. Like I said, I'll be in chat every now and again. And I'll see you guys there.